Hello, everyone. I can see people joining us. Welcome. We'll just give it a few minutes before we start, just to allow everyone to come in. I always see names that I recognise as well, which is always nice to see. So welcome, everyone. Just going to check all our settings are working correctly. We're good to go. For this session, to make sure that we're not looking at lots of different places, we're going to keep the chat closed, but just use the Q&A function, and it just means that it's all in one place, so we don't have to worry about checking between the two. Okay, we'll start with just the introduction and what to expect from today while we wait for just people to come through. Just to let you all know, the session is being recorded, so it will be distributed afterwards. So please don't worry if you miss something, you'll be able to catch up on it afterwards. I should get the recording round to you today, if not tomorrow. So welcome everyone. My name is Charlotte Burton. I'm the marketing manager for the School of Law here at Queen Mary. You might have seen me on other webinars or caught up with seeing me on other webinars. My role is to provide you as prospective students with opportunities to find out a bit more, particularly today, about studying postgraduate law at Queen Mary. And for many of you, you may be joining us in a matter of weeks, which is really exciting. So this is kind of a last chance opportunity to ask some questions to our brilliant panel that we've got here today. As I said, we'll have the Q&A open, so please feel free to ask questions as you go along. The purpose of this session is to provide you opportunities to just ask away. So pop questions in there and we'll do our best to get through them all. We have got an hour up to 1 p.m. Here in the UK. So we'll try and get through as many as possible, but if we do run out of time, I will put our inquiries email in the chat, which will come through to myself and my colleagues, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So hopefully we'll be able to help as much as possible today. Okay, so without further ado, I'll hand over to the important people here to introduce themselves. Karen, I'll come to you first. Would you like to introduce yourself and just what you do here at CCLS?
Sure, thank you, Charlotte, and delighted to be here meeting you, albeit virtually for the time being. So my title is Senior Lecturer in Clinical Legal Education, but also Director of Q Legal. So Q Legal is the award-winning pro bono commercial law clinic within CCLS, essentially giving students the chance to put their theory of law into practice by working with real clients and alongside external lawyers, as well as the lawyers and educators within our team. My background is I practiced law myself internationally for 15 years, and I've had a long-standing interest in the future of law and the future of work. So we've got a big focus on innovation and what the legal practice is going to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years within Q Legal. Shall I hand over to Gavin?
Yes, I'm Gavin Sutter. I'm the media law guy at Queen Mary. I've just marked the point where I've hit 25 years at CCLS, so I'm part of the furniture at this point. And I teach across a range of media law related subjects, including this year for the first time the law of the theatre, which is our newest module, and we'll be looking in that one at how theatre has been regulated, at the rights issues involved in shows, and how we regulate the money involved in funding a West End show and all that kind of fun stuff in London, of course, home of the theatre. And yeah, that's what I do primarily. Loukas.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, some of you, depending on your time zone. I'm Loukas Mistelis. I'm the Clive Smithoff Professor of Transnational Commercial Law and Arbitration, and I have been at Queen Mary for nearly 26 years. I think I've just passed my 25 years mark. I've been director of the School of Arbitration for nearly 17 years and director of the LLM in Comparative and International Dispute Resolution for the last 23 years. in various formats. In my spare time, I'm also a senior equity partner at Clyde & Co, practicing international arbitration out of London. For the last, I think, 20 years, my focus has been exclusively on international arbitration, both commercial and investment. And when I joined, I was the only full-time member of staff in arbitration. Now we have a team of 8 or 9 people, and I think we have, in that respect, the largest permanent faculty in arbitration, and also I would dare to say the most comprehensive offering. It will also be fair to say that we also have the best program. Naturally, not only the oldest, but certainly the most diverse and much more sort of covering all aspects of economic activity and the dispute resolution element of that. So I'm delighted to meet you all remotely, and I hope to see many of you in person in a few weeks.
Lovely, thank you everyone. So just for the audience, feel free, as I said, to pop questions in the chat. I will keep an eye on them and I'll field them to the panel as we go along. So let's start off, particularly for those that are joining us in a few weeks and probably thinking about modules, and I've had lots of emails about modules and advice on how to choose modules. I'm sure there'll be people here that are interested in all the areas that we have here. Gavin, I'm going to come to you first. Have you got any advice for students in choosing modules?
I think, yes, there are a lot of mechanics about which modules you choose and how many credits you do in each semester and that sort of thing. And we'll go through all of that when it comes to induction. But I think the thing I would be looking at this point and over the next couple of weeks before you arrive with us is looking at the information about everything that's available and thinking about what interests you. The LLM gives you quite a lot of freedom within your specialism to build your own program. So if you do TMT, you've got a lot of freedom there to think about whether you primarily think of yourself as a computer lawyer and are interested in cybercrime and those sort of developments, or e-commerce, or whether you're more about the content and you're more media focused, in which case you might be looking at my media modules, at modules where we regulate social media, at something like Gaetano's modules on video game law, interactive entertainment law, those sorts of things. So think about what interests you. Really, it's going to be a great year with this. It will be a long and miserable year if you pick modules that don't really interest you, but you think sort of look good on a CV. Think about what you're into, about what puts together and provides the program that you want to study. And that's a really good place to start from, where you can then think about what practically fits and so on.
Lovely, thanks, Gavin. And Karen, your modules are slightly different, I suppose, with Q Legal, aren't they? Do you want to explain a bit more about how yours work?
Sure. I mean, first, I just want to echo what Gavin said, though, about you find something that really you're genuinely interested in. I guess that what's slightly different about the modules that I and members of my team teach on is that it's applied law. So you're taking legal theory and applying it in a practical way. So there are a number of modules that Q Legal's involved with. The longest standing is Entrepreneurship Law Clinic module. So as with the voluntary extracurricular Q Legal activity, there's a real client, students work in pairs, they're advising a real client and working with external lawyers as well as the team. So it's very practical. Similarly, we've got a couple of new modules this year. One is public legal education for startups. So again, great for building commercial awareness, developing those sort of legal and professional skills and mindsets as well that complement and build on what you're learning in your more traditional academic modules. And then going really future focused, we've got a legal design module starting this semester, which is looking at giving students a different way of thinking and being aside from the way that you think and be as a lawyer. So it's giving people different mindsets, different frameworks to complement what they're getting from the rest of the course. So I think absolutely something you're interested in first, but also maybe think about, would it be interesting for you to do something where you're putting some theory into practice alongside that?
I think too, if you're really interested in media regulation and getting a feel for what the media actually involves, one of the Q legal projects that is well worth looking into is the podcast project. This is something Karen and I set up a few years ago with the TMT Law Institute, which I'm now the outgoing founding director of, became the client with Q Legal, and the students in that team actually put together real legitimate what get put out into the real world podcasts, working alongside technology students. So there's that assistance there, and getting a feel for how it actually works in the real world, which they can then feed back into understanding the media regulation and so on, which of course is the value of the Q Legal project. It's all about that real world experience and seeing how what you're learning academically feeds into practice.
Absolutely. And there was a question kind of about legal practice, LLM or modules. And I hope that answers it, to look at the different areas that you can develop and have opportunities, particularly if you are preparing for the SQE, as the person's asked.
May I make, however, a comment here? I think it's quite important. Unless you have a scholarship or you have particular instructions from this for the sponsor of your LLM, and in which case you might have limits in what you choose, I think it's important to enter into the course selection with a very open mind. In the sense, don't just choose a course because somebody told you that's a good course. I think you need to have, and I think that effectively what Karen and Gavin also say, have perhaps effectively two lists of courses that you want to take because you want them to appear on your transcript eventually and might be relevant to employer, but leave some space for taking something which is a bit more alternative. So if theater is something perhaps that appeals to you, or if you want to do something in relation to arts, or you want to do something, a particular narrow topic on insurance that we offer and no one else offers. So don't come with sort of blocking your ability to choose something that is unique to London and unique to Queen Mary. And also don't forget that you choose the courses you choose for your own purposes, which is either to get to the right type of job or to just get the right level of education. And in that sense, we are, although we don't have, all our courses have a practical element. I mean, arbitration is entirely, one arbitration was created at Queen Mary 40 years. It was debated widely within the university whether that will qualify as an academic subject. And at a certain time, somebody wanted to block the module from continuing. So now, of course, almost every major university has an arbitration program. But so we will address practical issues, but we are not a professional school. So we're not going to give you what you learn at SQE or in the bar vocational courses or the equivalent. So all our courses have a comparative, an international, and a practical element. Of course, Q Legal much more so, the clinics, again, much more so, or if you take a moot court. But we are an academic institution. You need to know that sort of the foundations you get is the theoretical foundations that you need to have so you can apply the knowledge. So try to have a blended approach. Think whether you want to join Q Legal. Think whether you want to do a moot as well as taking the courses. And don't be followers. Sort of design your syllabus, your particular program, because it excites you. Gavin said, winter nights in London are quite long, so you don't want to be sort of leaving a class at 9 o'clock and said, "Oh my God, that was one of these boring classes again." So they won't, but just be prepared.
Thank you, Loukas. And I think we've got a question that leads on quite nicely, actually, about dissertation. And I know that for some programs, dissertation is compulsory and some it's optional. Loukas, maybe you can continue on this.
Yes.
How do you think students should go about deciding whether to pursue a dissertation or not?
Yes. In my program, the dissertation is optional. I think about 50% of the students do dissertation or slightly less. let me answer the question both ways. I mean, we went down the route of an optional dissertation, but one of the strong elements of doing an advanced degree, a master's degree, is to have an opportunity to write a piece which is longer than what you might have done in your undergraduate program. So my view would be, but that's personal view, is that the dissertation is a very critical aspect of the program if you want to embark on a PhD program afterwards. And a lot of places that will look at your PhD application, they would be looking at whether you have done a dissertation and how well you have done the dissertation, perhaps even more than the way you have done in the exams. But even if you don't do a dissertation, lawyers, despite what popular culture says, particularly American popular culture, is often done in writing and developing writing skills by either taking we have a few courses at Queen Mary which have a sort of a 5,000 or 7,000 word essay, which is not a dissertation. And for example, in one of my courses, I examine by the way of the writing skills I see as a partner at the law firm I would like my associates to have. I ask you to write a case note in the first 2,500 words, so that the way you could present the case in a comprehensive way, but for somebody who doesn't have time to read the whole case of whatever number of pages. And in the second half, I expect you to write a blog post. We talked about blogs through the Q Legal. So how you write a blog post, which is a short article, sort of 1,500 to 200, 2,000 words, sort of, and how you get it right. So even if you don't do a dissertation, because you're going to take more courses and you want to learn more subjects, make sure that one of your courses have an essay type of assessment, so that you acquire and challenge and develop your skills in writing.
Yeah, no, so I completely agree with that. TMT as well. Dissertations are optional. I would say if you're seriously thinking about going into academia, which inevitably nowadays means a PhD, you probably don't want to be coming out with an LLM and no longer piece of writing, because that's something they very much look for. The other thing is, if you are considering a PhD, a dissertation can be a very good way of finding out whether that's for you, because it gives you that chance to do a reasonably lengthy piece of independent research where you're really reliant on yourself to pick it out. If you're the sort of person who likes working on your own and digging through stuff, and you know there's something that is going to come up where in the average module there just isn't time to really get into that specific thing on that particular depth with that range of stuff, dissertation is a great place to do that. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, should I do a dissertation or not? I'm not sure. I don't know. What do you think I should write about? You know, if you can't find something that you have a burning interest to write about for a dissertation, that may be a suggestion that the dissertation is not necessarily the route for you. But certainly if you're considering going further in academia, I think it's a very important thing to give a lot of thought to doing.
Perfect. Thank you, Gavin. Okay, we've got some questions on Q Legal. So Karen, over to you. Two questions. The first one is it voluntary, and if selected, would it count as part-time working hours? And the second one is, how or when does one register for Q Legal?
Great, thank you for those questions. So there are two ways of getting involved in Q Legal. One is by selecting one of the credit-bearing modules that we produce. So I mentioned those briefly, but Entrepreneurship Law Clinic, Public Legal Education for Startups, or Legal Design. So those are modules that you select in the same way as you select any of your modules. So picking up on what Gavin said earlier, make sure you read all the options that are open to you, look through what those modules will entail, and then just select in the normal way. For those modules, it's first come, first served. So there's a cap on the number of places. And if you sign up soon, then good luck, you'll get in. If you don't apply via the module, or if you're too late to get one of those places, it doesn't mean you can't participate, because we also run programs as a voluntary extracurricular activity. In fact, most of our students are doing this alongside their formal academic study. So I'll jump to the second question because it links to the application process. Keep an eye out on the Q Legal website page. So there's the Queen Mary website page, there's a CCLS website page, but if you just put Q Legal into a search engine, you'll see there is a Q Legal page. In the student section, there will be details on how to apply for the voluntary position with the form. It's the route in to make the application, guidance on how to do it, and the deadline. So I don't know, Charlotte, we may be able to put it in chat, might be the best thing to do. So those that will go live in a couple of weeks. So maybe even before you arrive, it's only open to people who have accepted a place with CCLS, but you can apply there. It is a competitive selection process, but most people get through. The second question related to does it count as part-time hours for, I'm assuming for immigration purposes. There are two things here. One is immigration, one is employment law purposes. If you're on a module, then it's part of an academic course. So that's straightforward. So it doesn't count. If you are volunteering with us, it may count towards the hours, particularly if you're selected on an externship work placement program for immigration purposes. It doesn't count as work for employment law purposes. Now, I realize as I'm saying this, that sounds a bit confusing and complicated. We will be there during welcome weeks to explain in detail and to answer these questions in detail. There are two in-person Q Legal sessions and a recorded session the following week, an online session, so we can answer any of those specific queries that individuals might have. But just to recap, there's a possibility it may, for some students who are international working on certain programs as volunteers, that it could count towards their hours.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. Okay, and following on from that, there's a couple of questions which are essentially the same one, which is about when module selection will begin. So most of you, if you have accepted your place to come and study us, would have received an email yesterday, which is like starting the welcome emails that you have received. Module registration and everything to do with module selection will take place during the induction period. So you'll be given all the information you need to know during that period, and there'll be a deadline for when you have to select your modules by. You'll be given opportunities to meet the academics who will explain things to you. You can ask questions. So please do not worry, you don't need to do anything before you get here. I have heard in the past some academics would advise you can have a look through the module list online to give you a bit of an idea before, but everything will be explained to you in the induction period, so please don't worry about registering for anything yet. You've got plenty of time. Okay, we have Loukas, one for you particularly. So students looking to focus on international arbitration, investment treaty arbitration, would you recommend taking international investment law as well?
The short answer is not necessarily. I think if you take the international investment treaty arbitration module, which is a 30 credit modules in the first term, the module is quite comprehensive. We work quite a bit with case law, and we're even working with major international investment agreements. So there is a bit of an overlap with the module called international investment law. I think international investment law looks more on the substantive protections and also on aspects of policy. So I don't think that you have to take both. I mean, you can sort of free if you wish one module and take something else. And if you might change this to the extent that that's possible, and that's subject to a number of conditions, you can audit the other module and get to the bottom of that. So I perhaps wouldn't mind, Charlotte, to answer the question about one of the anonymous attendee, which said that what if we take also a module about taxation? By all means, I think, especially if we take the example of investment treaty arbitration, some of the very high-profile cases, whether Loukas or Devas, etc., they have to do with taxation. And as a matter of fact, arbitration, the arbitration program runs what we call a series of co-curricular seminars. And one of the co-curricular seminars we're planning for October is about the interaction of arbitration or investment arbitration in particular and taxation. So there's elements of synergy. And even if there was not, I think taxation is a good enough broader module to take.
Lovely. Thank you for doing both of those, Loukas. Oh, I've just got rid of one that I didn't mean to. There was one about societies, and I found it. Here we go. Question regarding societies. So they've mentioned two particular ones, but we can make it nice and broad. Do you have an idea if it's doable for us as new postgraduate students to join them, or is it better to be a member? Is there any advice on this? Does anyone know much about students being part of societies? Karen's nodding. Go on.
I can pick up a little bit because prior to joining Q Legal, I worked with the undergrads, which is where a lot of the societies are based. So obviously, if you're doing an undergraduate degree, you're there for 3 or 4 years. Typically, undergrad students will join a society in a first year and then be involved for a couple of years and then take the roles of leadership or responsibility on the board. However, so even though the societies tend to have a strong undergraduate membership, it doesn't preclude postgraduate students from joining them. They are societies that relate to students across the School of Law and the wider university. So there's no reason why you shouldn't become a member and take advantage of all the good networking opportunities and social opportunities that the societies bring. And actually, there's no reason why you shouldn't apply for a membership position. You know, draw on the experience you've had before. I think they are they're very open processes for membership. So I'd encourage you to have a go if it's in line with your particular interest. It's a great way to meet other people within the university and outside the university.
Perfect, thank you. And there's so much else that you can get involved in as well. We have like tons of events, particularly at CCLS.
Yes, I think it's good that Karen is making the point. I think for better or worse, most of the societies within Queen Mary sit within the undergraduate program, but they're not exclusive to undergraduate students. What we see a lot of graduate students do is, as you know, a lot of you will step forward in the next few weeks to become a class rep. And in that capacity, you are creating a de facto sort of society interest group, and you can promote seminars to organize, you can sort of engage with mooting, or you can engage with a lot of other activities. And certainly we encourage the students to join a number of other societies. For example, Queen Mary has an arrangement with the IBA for a student membership for all of you. That's perhaps the most important society for international lawyers. We have arrangements with the Charter Institute of Arbitrators for a student membership as well. So in every thematic sort of program, you will get quite a bit of inside information. And that some of that will emerge in the induction program. If not, it will be in the first couple of weeks of classes.
Lovely, thank you. Right, what have we got here? Oh.
So there's a question which you not answer sort of fully, Charlotte. That's about family law. I think the only interaction of, family law and CCLS, where we all of us sit, as it happens, there's not many. But for example, there's quite a lot to be said about doing a course in mediation or ADR, which is quite important in family law, or becoming even more important. So these negotiation and mediation skills that you will study either in ADR 1 or in a negotiation module could be quite helpful to that to take forward to the family law.
Thank you. Gavin, there's one for you. So they're preparing to do their TMT LLM and they're keen to understand employment opportunities available after completing the program. Have you got some examples of what people go on to do? They're not actually looking at the legal area, but
Sure, yeah.
broadly.
I mean, a lot of my students who've done particularly media focused stuff have gone on to quite a range of careers. I've had one or two gone into journalism. One in particular went another institution after doing our course, which does offer a particularly good journalism program and is now working in that field. A lot of our students go on to become data protection officers in-house in a lot of big companies. A lot of my students work in-house, a lot of in-house work. So legal practice, if you are looking at it and thinking, I don't want to spend 30 years in a law firm doing traditional law firm stuff, is quite a big beast nowadays, and particularly in the media area. An awful lot of that actually means working in-house at various places, which you might find a more appealing opportunity. Some of my former students do things like working as duty lawyers for the newspaper industry, that kind of stuff. I've had students go on to work in the PR field. One of my former students ran a team for several years at Bell Pottinger when it was one of the really big PR firms, and was drawing on all the stuff she'd learned in media law relating to privacy and defamation and the legalities of it, but looking at reputation management, in effect, as a much broader set of issues where resorting to the law is only one part of that. So I think there's actually a very wide range of, in fact, one of our other students, one of my real stars from a few years ago, is working in-house now with a software company. I think they're called King, the company who make Candy Crush.
Oh.
And she's been working there for a number of years in-house. So there are quite a wide range of alternatives. Having legal qualifications is always attractive to people in the business world. A lot of our former students work in various capacities at eBay, I think with Meta, and a lot of these big companies. They can go into journalism, learning how to be a lawyer, and particularly working with law at postgraduate level, is all about developing critical thinking skills. So any career which relies on that, your law qualifications are going to be a big advantage in that. Now, we do have quite an extensive careers advice program that will be available to you through the year at CCLS, and support for a time after graduation, where they'll walk you through CV writing, applications, practice interviews, and a lot of advice on what you can do with an LLM that isn't just going and doing a practice certificate and qualifying as a practicing lawyer if that's not the field for you. And I say that as very much somebody who came to that realization in my own undergraduate final year, that I did not want to practice law. I was a trainee solicitor in Belfast for a month in the summer of 1997, and I ran away to do my LLM because I hated it. I didn't run very far. I also did my LLM in Belfast, but through that LLM, I almost by accident became an academic. So, that's the only health warning I would put on this. If you're studying law and the practice route isn't necessarily for you in the traditional format, you might become an academic by accident. So, be aware. But no, there are a lot of opportunities when you come out with an LLM and TMT, where that and the skills you pick up during that will be really useful. And particularly with a background in legal journalism, there are openings in that world that you could then build on that with. And on that front, you might be particularly interested in the Q Legal podcast program, building those skills as well.
You've mentioned Q Legal. Can I jump in just to add a bit? Is that fine? I mentioned earlier that I'm really interested in the future of work and the future of legal practice. And one of the things that I've really noticed is that sometimes students can come with quite a traditional view of what being a lawyer means, and quite, this is the path and these are the career options. One of the things that we say within Q Legal is, think of us as if we're an innovative law firm. We do the full range of activities that lawyers do, including putting students out on secondment. So I've mentioned briefly the externship program, where students are placed within a startup. This year, just gone, we've had 4 students have ended up being employed by the startup or scale up, some of them, that they spent their work experience program on. Now, we don't guarantee it. I must say that it's not guaranteed. But the feedback we get every year, even if students don't end up staying with that externship host, is that people's eyes have been opened to the range of career possibilities. With tech, with so many industries are being shaken up, things are being done in new ways, there are new players. It's not just, legal practice is not just the law firms, that you've got the big 4, you've got even large, who were legal publishers are now large legal tech producers moving towards increasingly delivery of operational legal resources. So there's a whole range of things that lawyers can do. And as Gavin said, having an LLM, the skills you will learn, the contacts you will make will stand you in very good stead, whichever career path you decide to go along.
Great, thanks, Karen. Loukas, I'm going to come to you on this kind of recruitment academic line. Someone's asked about, are there ever TA opportunities, or do we ever kind of recruit students for stuff? I know I've seen it in the past, but
yes,
I'll let you.
I think I've seen there a couple of these questions. Technically for us, a teaching assistant means somebody who could perhaps even lead a tutorial class. And as you would understand and hopefully appreciate, for us it's very difficult to pick up any of our students to stand in front of the rest of the class and teach the tutorial for them. So we do not, as such, recruit LLM students as teaching associates. We do recruit students as research assistants. When we have moots, for example, we can hire a student who has a bit of experience in mooting as a student coach, which is effectively a TA post, if you wish, but not to assist as such with the course. But certainly, we do recruit for research. I think we are quite a transparent institution. Also, in order to be able to do that, this has to be advertised, so it will not be done sort of on a one-to-one basis, but students would be able to participate in this process. So research assistants, yes, teaching assistant, quite a bit less, unless it's a very technical task like sort of designing a database or something like that. There are a lot of questions relating to what happens after you finish your program and what are the work opportunities. In arbitration, we have, I think Queen Mary generally, and Karen had worked in that part of Queen Mary in the past, have been looking very much and in constant discussions with industry to place students as interns, to do summer placements, vacation schemes, etc. In arbitration, historically, we have a very good link with about half a dozen law firms and other corporations that would take students as interns. For example, we do place every year somebody to work in the dispute resolution group within GE Renewables, so General Electric renewable firm called Renova. So the current student she's been very, very good. She's been there for 12 months, has a few months to go until January. So that's a paid proper internship for at least 12 months, sometimes for a bit longer. A number of law firms that I will not mention specifically today for obvious reasons approach us with a view of recruiting students as interns, either for a sort of project or for 6 months or longer. Sometimes that comes with a specific sort of qualification request, somebody who speaks Russian or speaks Spanish or speaks sort of Italian or speaks, I think once we had a request for somebody who speaks Finnish. And it's not one of the easiest languages to find somebody in London, but we could on this occasion find. So And also all the arbitral institutions offer internships, the LCIA, ICC, others. And a lot of students find some sort of first employment as working as assistants to arbitrators who need a tribunal secretary or somebody to support the work. So there is sort of, it's very difficult to quantify how many students do that, but I would think that about a dozen to sometimes 2 dozen students in the specialisms sometimes do that. And we will always advertise, and we're going to have interactions with arbitral institutions, and all of that will be fully sort of laid out in that sense. If I can pick up also one more question about reading lists. I had a couple of emails actually in the summer about reading lists, and most of my colleagues, me included, do not release reading lists ahead of the program. It's partly a bit of a level playing field, sort of effectively everyone is on the same page when things start. But also I think it's quite good to have fresh. I would advise everyone who needs some preparation, especially if you've never studied in England, and English is your second or third language, to read something more generic. I mean, if you're going to do TMT, don't read the textbook on media law or telecoms, but read a bit in the English legal system, and also perhaps even something on European law if you've not done anything European. That will give you quite a bit of the jargon, understanding of the system, the structure of the course, because that we don't teach. We assume that you are ready to onboard on that. So if you want to do that, so to read a book about the English legal system, or read something about sort of a very nice sort of text on English or European law, that will actually help you for most of your modules.
The absolute classic is Glanville Williams Learning the Law. The actual Glanville right on as a brand, it's updated pretty much every year. So look out for that one. You'll find it very cheap. And also have a look at the UK Parliament website and the Court Service website, because there's really good information there on how our legislative system works in England and how the court system works. And I think you'll find that a really helpful starting point.
Thanks, Gavin. While we've got you, there's a follow-up from your last question. So they're working as a legal journalist at the moment. Are there any particular modules in TMT you'd recommend?
Yes, particularly I think it would be worth looking at in the first semester, the SOLM 212, old media versus new media. It's got a long and convoluted title, but it's essentially social media law. And in that course, we look at the way the nature of the media itself has been fundamentally shifting. We look at traditional media laws. We look at the problems the internet and the recalibration and the shift in the media industry with the internet focus have raised for those traditional laws, and how the law is seeking to respond to that. Also in the first semester, there is reputation management, which deals particularly with libel and privacy laws, which are very significant for anybody working in journalism. And then in the second semester, the media regulation module will be particularly useful, especially the large chunk of that course where we look in depth at the interrelationship between the media and the justice process, effectively the media reporting about the courts and the justice system, and how we balance that open justice and media freedom against preserving the integrity of the justice process against any threats the media can pose to that. So I think those would be the ones that would particularly spring to mind as of interest to somebody looking at working in journalism with a legal focus.
Lovely, well done, Gavin. You did well thinking of modules off of the list that we have. So fabulous. Okay, so we've got just under 15 minutes left, so we'll try and get through as much as we can. there's some questions about Viz Teams or Viz Mooting. I've just looked that up because I didn't know what that was, and then I saw it's something for Lucas.
Yes, I've known that for about 28 years. And Queen Mary actually has won the Vismut a few years back. Yes, we do support, Queen Mary has quite an extensive program in mooting. I think we support the media moot, we support IP, WTO, mediation. This is a commercial arbitration moot. We also support the cross-examination moot. We also support the 2 investment arbitration moots. So during the induction, there will be a call for applications, both for students and student coaches. And Queen Mary has set aside some budget. So we do also support the students throughout the program all the way to Vienna. Yes, we do.
Fabulous. Sounds great. Okay, Lucas, while we've got you, another one for you. It says, is it possible for comparative and international dispute resolution LLM to work in international organizations focused on research and discussions on law development instead of the traditional legal practice line of work?
Yes, I think some of the bigger arbitration organizations are effectively international organizations. If you look at ICSID, is a self-standing international organization within the World Bank Group with 160 something members. If you look at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, it's an international organization based in The Hague. If you look at places like the Cairo Regional Center or the Asian International Arbitration Center in Cairo and Kuala Lumpur, respectively, they're all international organizations. We also have had a number of people who, during the studies, work with the United Nations, particularly UNCITRAL and UNCTAD, which are the 2 main UN agencies, the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, which really work very much on promulgating texts and looking at the future of sort of arbitration and dispute resolution. Perhaps one should also mention the OECD as well in Paris, which is another organization which works quite a bit now in dispute resolution. So yes, we make a lot of these introductions. And I looked at the international organization in the international governmental organization. Of course, there's the whole area of the international non-governmental organizations, including the International Chamber of Commerce. We have had quite a number of links. And we have sort of alumni working in most of them. I mean, one of the top 3 lawyers in the OECD is Queen Mary, is a graduate of our program. If you look at the ICC, I think there are about 7 or 8 counsel who are all Queen Mary graduates. So we have quite a bit of penetration, if you wish, in all these organizations. And if there is specific interest, there's nothing wrong with organizing a specific career session which focus on international organizations, both governmental and non-governmental.
Great, thank you, Lucas. Okay. Right, last few questions. Gavin, you're being tested on your modules now. Someone's interested in IP, but they'd like to choose media ones as well. Any suggestions?
Yes, there are 2 that will be of particular interest to IP lawyers. One is the new Law of the Theatre module, which is actually a joint IP PMT production that I'm working on with Joanna Gibson. And there'll be a large chunk of IP intermixed in that, as well as theatre regulation more generally. Another one that immediately springs to mind is media law reputation management. Now, I mentioned that earlier. In that, we look at privacy, we look at libel, we look at the concept of personality rights. And a lot of that stuff is very much adjacent to the idea of branding and your reputation as an individual, which is an obvious synergy for people interested in the intellectual property side of the entertainment and the media business. So those would be the 2 I would look at first. All of them will be interesting. I mean, if you were looking at being an IP specialist within the media world, I would think about something like media regulation to give you a general grounding and understanding of how the media is regulated. And that would work very nicely then alongside the more IP-specific modules like the business of film and the law of film, which focus very much on the IP aspects of the movie industry.
Great, thank you. Okay, Loukas, another one for you. Sorry, Karen, I'm sure there'll be some soon. So they've said, a big fan of your work, so some nice praise there, of course. They can see that the commercial conflict of laws isn't running this year. They wanted to know how important it is to have preliminary knowledge of the same to go about ICA.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. We run to, I think, conflict of laws generally are quite useful for people who practice in arbitration. So we have, Queen Mary has two conflict of laws modules. One is the international commercial litigation, which is going to run, and the commercial conflict of laws, which is a 15 credit module, which is not going to run. It doesn't run for two reasons. The main reason is that a lot of the commercial conflict of laws was focusing partly on UK law or English and partly on European law, and there's been a bit of a transition. The elements of conflict of laws that are relevant to commercial arbitration and indeed to investment arbitration will be covered in modules 44 and 47 respectively. So we acknowledge that relevance, and that will be covered. If I may make a comment to Gavin, I might need his advice to take one of his modules, especially the reputation management. With my practicing hat, we've seen increasingly that whenever there's a major dispute, which has quite a bit of key topics, that PR agencies are being engaged, and we lawyers are supposed to be looking at press releases that are produced by the parties, but for the parties by PR agencies and approved by lawyers. So it's a very nice sort of nexus there. Everything which has a bit of other state participation, sanctions, or whatever, it goes through that route. I will need to take one of your courses.
Okay, thank you. Last couple of ones. This one I don't know about because I'm not an academic, but is a PhD mandatory to become an academic? And see Gavin nodding.
Short answer to that is nowadays, yes. There was a time when it was something you did to create opportunities to become an academic if they didn't sort of come up otherwise. I'm one of those dinosaurs who never quite got around to doing a PhD because I got into academia otherwise and was always busy doing other things and have built up my own expertise otherwise. But nowadays, there are a number of short-term sort of research project type opportunities that can come up in academia you can do without a PhD. But really, if you're looking for a long-term career in academia, particularly somewhere, Russell Group type university, a PhD has become a must. The people I see going into that kind of academia without a PhD nowadays tend to be people who've worked at a high level in law firms internationally, 20, 30 years as a partner behind them, going into academia as a sort of early retirement project. So yes, I'm afraid if you're looking at academia longer term, start thinking about the PhD route now.
Great, thanks, Gavin. Okay, last question in the Q&A, and then I'm going to hold them and I'm going to ask something to all of you just as a closing one. So Loukas, for international arbitration, is the transnational law module recommended?
I suppose all modules offered by Queen Mary are very good. So I think the transnational law has a particular dynamic in the way we approach it. Is effectively law which is not entirely domestic, not entirely international. This is a module which actually goes very much to the core of the creation of CCLS by Roy Good, who is one of the leaders in transnational law these days. I think it is useful to take it if you've never taken anything in transnational law, but I think a lot of the other modules, including in arbitration, they will be covering aspects of transnational law. Again, if you look at sources of law in modules 43, 44, there's quite a bit of discussion of transnational law, where there's a bit of that methodology of the sources of law is reflected. It's a very good module, perhaps it's a bit more academic than other modules because it looks at the core of the methodology and how Philip Jessup developed it in 1956, or people like Smithoff, who has endowed my chair. But it's a bit of a cost-benefit analysis, as a lot of you have asked, given the modules you have, but it's certainly a good program.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop taking questions in the Q&A now, and we're just going to, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. So just to close, last question for you all. Karen, we'll let you speak because you've and let everyone else have a bit of a rest. Any advice for students on making the most of their LLM or their time at Queen Mary studying postgraduate law?
I often say to our students, this is an opportunity to have free holidays for the rest of your life. And what I mean by that is you are going to meet wonderful people from all over the world. That is one of the absolute joys of studying at CCLS. So I would, of course, suggest you make the most, throw yourself into your studies. You'll learn a huge amount in legal subject matter. But beyond that, you will learn from each other, the cross-cultural piece. I learn from students all the time. It's wonderful to build that network and friendship groups. So I think definitely make the most of everybody at CCLS. And beyond that, make the most of your time in London. It's an international city. There's lots going on. We're really well placed geographically. Just take advantage of everything you can. That's a trite answer, but there's a lot to do. Maybe make a plan as soon as you can, because time's limited. But I'm sure Gavin and Loukas will have other really helpful suggestions.
Anything to add, Gavin?
Oh, certainly. If you're coming to study media law, particularly in London, London is one of the world's centres of media. So soak that up. Take advantage of every opportunity you get to go to events, to go to the theatre, go and apply for tickets and go and see a BBC show being made. Particularly something, have I got news for you? See that filmed across 2 hours on a Thursday night, then watch the cut on a Friday that goes out, and think about what have they cut for time, what have they cut for legal reasons. And you'll learn a lot about how the media operates by doing things like that.
Perfect. Thanks, Gavin. Loukas, 30 seconds. Last bit.
Yes, London is, of course, one of the major metropolises in the world. So London alone is attractive. But what you will find out is that this year of the LLM is the best networking opportunity you will ever have in your life. Because you go to a lot of legal events and you do a network, but you don't have the time. You have the time over a year to get to know colleagues from Chile, from Central Asia, from Central Africa, from Northern Africa, like no one's before. And I hear from students often that they refer cases to each other, they keep in touch. So stay outside your own national group, reach out to other people, get to know their foods, get to know their culture, and work will follow.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, we're going to close it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know that everything you said today will be really valuable to the students joining us. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This has been recorded, as I said in the beginning, so I will send this out so you can catch up on this if you want to check back on anything. I have also put the inquiries email in the chat, which is pglaw-inquiries@qmul.ac.uk. If you have any questions, please feel to get in touch with myself and the team. But from there, we'll sign off. Thank you so much, everyone. Loukas, Gavin, Karen, thank you. Really appreciate it, and wish everyone a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you, and we'll see you all in September.
Yeah, not long now.
Yes.